We did it. We are selling ammo. NazoAmmo.com. We teamed up. Keystone Munitions, quality, premium product. We're selling it online. What do? You go to NazoAmmo.com. First thing that pops up, what's this? It's an email list. What's the email list do? It's going to give you access to promo codes. It's going to give you access to events, T-shirts, apparel, everything we're doing. Get on that email list. You want 45? 45's not on the website, but then it's coming in. You're ahead of the curve. You're ahead of the guy who's just finding out about it. You're a part of the family. Very fast and furious how we do everything around here. Nazo Ammo. We are moving Keystone Munitions. Premium products. We're doing it. You want to pick up? You don't want to have it sent? You're Carl. You live down the road? Pick up Nazo at the promo code at the end. Now you're picking up ammo here. We're doing it, man. We are doing it. Nazo Ammo. www.nazoammo.com. Small town, big ammo. 5andDimeEaston.com. They have their website officially up. You can shop most of their stuff online. They also have Fucked. They have Fucked in the store. I think they're the only one allowed to sell Fucked out of their store. It's 484-544-4719. That's at 5andDimeEaston on social media. These guys are great. I mean, they're killing it. It's the best skate shop, in my opinion, in the area. They have a lot of cool stuff there. Both the owners are rad. I stop in when I can. They're open Monday through Friday, 11 to 7, Saturday, 10 to 7, and Sunday, 11 to 5. There is someone always there to help you out with your needs. You can check their inventory off the website. You can check out some videos they got on there, and they're doing some cool things. Their social media is awesome. They support a lot of local skaters in the area, and they're growing. I'm excited to be a part of them growing. I'm excited to help them out. They're helping me out. It's a good relationship, and I push 5 and Dime Easton because they're the best skate shop in the area. Check them out. BTG Blasting. My man, Pat Cunningham, offering you pressure washing, disinfecting, acid washing, and rust removal. It is a high pressure washing business, bringing your stuff back to glory. He does anything from houses all the way to having him come into the studio. He comes down to the studio on a schedule and he disinfects the studio, and we are certifiably clean, and it just covers all the bases. So with the things that are going on now, you're going to need somebody like this. He's got a sticker out front. I am certifiably clean down here. He also offers free estimates on all your needs. He can do corporate and at home. You can reach him at 484-241-1711 and btgblasting@gmail.com. He just started this business and it is taking off. I'm super excited for him, and I'm super excited that he's a sponsor of the show. And you can check out BTG Blasting on social media for all of your pressure washing, disinfecting, acid wash, and rust removal needs. It's high pressure washing, bringing your stuff back to glory. He offers many things, and you need to check him out. Eric K. Dowdle, defense attorney. We had him on the show, and what crazy stories this guy's had. He's helped a ton of people over the years, and if you're looking for help, he is your guy. You can contact them at 610-882-3000, and it's ekdefense.com. Do you have a pending court case? Do you have a court appearance and need a defense lawyer? Do you need proper representation? Felony, misdemeanor, drug offense, assault, homicide, DUI, traffic violation, appeals. Reach out to Eric. Check out the podcast we did with him as well. It has his whole story on there. If you need help, Eric is here to help you. He sponsors the show. We appreciate it. He's going to be doing a monthly thing with us. Eric will be a part of the family now. Thank you for sponsoring. I don't even know what episode we're on. Episode, I don't know, maybe 179, 180. Welcome to Never Again Radio. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
We had a podcast before the podcast. That's when you know they're going to be really good. I briefly met you over at Caravan, and you just seemed like such an interesting person, the way you carried yourself, and then you helped one of my friends out with choosing a cigar, and then we talked on the phone, and you have just such a very interesting life, which is why I love to bring people like yourself on. I'm excited to dig into this. How did you get involved with selling cigars or even getting into smoking cigars?
Well, my story is a little different from a lot of people that choose this profession because, no, I'm sorry, this profession chooses us. I'll get into that in a second. I was a model. So I have a history in acting and modeling. And my agency was actually out of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So before I even knew, I'm from South Jersey. So before I even knew what Bethlehem was, I had an agency based here. Now they hired all the models for Cigar Fest, which happens once a year, first weekend of May.
I just found out what Cigar Fest was a couple months ago. My friend's like, it's a big deal.
It is a big deal, especially in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of people that come from all over the place, but specifically in Pennsylvania, it's a really big deal. So here I am, struggling actress, not just getting into it. Jesus, this was 2013 was the first year that they had me come out for that. And I had already been acting since 2009. So I was like, okay, it's money. $15 an hour is $15 an hour to walk around in high heels and sell the shirt off my back, because that was the shtick for 2013. So 2013 went well. I'm like, okay, this is cool. It's just cigars. But then 2014, they brought me back to the Drew Estate booth. Now, Drew Estate is the #1 sponsor for Cigar Fest. I can say with some confidence, because that's what they told me. They're like, you did such a great job last year that we wanted to bring you back. So there's 6 different options of cigars. And I'm thinking, all right, I want to do a good job, right? So I'm asking the rep at the time, Chris Stone, I'm like, okay, what's this cigar? What's that cigar? What's this cigar? What's that cigar? And he's like, could you just smoke one? just smoke it. Because I didn't understand. I didn't smoke cigarettes, never smoked weed. I didn't smoke anything before. And he's like, okay, well, cut the cigar. We had the perfect cutter, so I cut it. He's like, take the footband off, light the cigar, don't inhale. I'm like, I don't even think about it because I never smoked anything before.
Yeah.
So I take a puff of the cigar and I go, oh, shit. I get it. Oh, no. I'm going to do this for a while. Like, I instantly knew. It was definitely one of those crystallizing moments that, okay, the clouds opened up, the angels sang, and God said, I'm sorry, Jesus spoke. Jesus said, this is what you're doing, bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. What was the experience of it? Was the taste, the flavor? Because I was talking before the show when a friend of mine brought cigars down here, and we were watching the fights, and I might have told this story on the Caravan one, but he was like, the fights were over early. Sometimes they go on early and then they end, and then there's not a lot for us to do down here. The bar wasn't here. We weren't into smoking pipes or cigars at the time. So sometimes there's just dull stuff. So then he was like, we're all gonna smoke a cigar, and he brought acid cigars, and he was just like, we're gonna go outside and we're gonna smoke them. And I was like, I smoked cigarettes before and I missed the ritual of having a cigarette. And then I was like, cool, like, you don't inhale, and this isn't something that I'm gonna be doing every day, but we'll just see what this is gonna be. And the conversations that happened outside on the sidewalk, and everybody kind of went around to each other, and you had to interact because the time that it takes to smoke a cigar. And then I was like, oh, now I get it.
Yep.
Because I always just smelled it and then would be like, oh, I don't mind the smell of a cigar, but I never understood why someone would want to smoke a cigar.
Right. Well, and that was one of the many reasons. So in that specific experience, I'm looking around at Cigar Fest, you get 6,000 people in 2 days minimum. And that's not including the manufacturers, the 100 manufacturers that seem to be there. I don't know the exact number. I'm just rounding up because there's small companies, big companies, all represented at Cigar Fest. And I'm looking around like, why are people doing this? I didn't get it until I took a puff. And it's that camaraderie. It's the conversations. You can solve the world's problems in a cigar lounge with, with your buddies. You're like, this is what we need to do. Government, religion. And if now there are a lot of rules in cigar shops, it's don't have a conversation about religion or politics unless you can do it responsibly.
Yeah.
And you can totally do it respectfully. If you can't, don't bring it up. It's that simple. And I really appreciated that aspect, to be able to have something in common with every single person in the room. It's amazing. It's magical. And that's what I really love about the cigar industry. That's one of the many things, but it's probably top 5.
Yeah, it was a real, it changed the whole vibe of how we do stuff. And then now it's like, when I went down to Caravan, he gave me cigars, and I was excited to have a cigar and then to be able to share them. And then when they came on the podcast, or you gave me cigars, like, I share them with my friends now that are into cigars, or like, I'll go over to my buddy Jer's and we'll sit out on his porch area out front and we'll just smoke a cigar. And it's like, all right, well, we have an hour. And then it's like you're just talking and hanging out. And then I started realizing there was times that I used to like smoking cigarettes because it was these little pockets of time I either have by myself or I have with somebody else who's doing it with me. And then you don't realize that like what comes out of those tobacco experiences is this weird moments of time that it's very similar to this. Like we talked on social media and had a phone call, but we're never going to get this kind of interacting again unless we would smoke a cigar. Like It's long format conversation because you have to finish, at minimum, what's the smaller ones take? A half hour, 45 minutes? Yeah. And then like I didn't realize because the other weekend I got into one of the larger ones that he gave me. My buddy's like, yo, I'm not, and I was the only one smoking, and he's like, yo, I'm not sitting out here for an hour and a half with you. And I was like, no, dude, I'll be fine. And then like after like 25 minutes, I'm like, this didn't go anywhere. And then like, so I put it out, and then like I would, every time they would smoke, I would have a little bit more of it. But that whole camaraderie, and then like being introduced to going down to the shop and then checking out how Caravan was, and then my first event is when I did the smash burgers down there. Oh, so like when
the Drew Estate event.
Yeah. So when I went down there, everybody was awesome. Everybody was there because they were into it. There were so many different people where you can meet women, older people, younger people, like families that are there, like, couples that are there. They're both into cigars. And then everybody was like, when I saw you like helping out customers, I was like, man, this is so interesting. Like how she's there to like help people. And then my buddy Jer was like, well, I'm going to go talk to her. And then like, he wanted the experience of the rep telling him about it. Right. And then like that's when I didn't realize that like you're going to like a specialty shop and then you have specialists that are going to help you get introduced into what you're looking for. And then I was like, dude, this is like a rabbit hole to go down, and it's so much fun. I mean, and that was one of the main reasons I wanted to bring you on.
Well, and you make an interesting point. I forget about that aspect. So this last COVID year was miserable for a lot of reasons. Now, I can work from home. I don't really get bored. There's plenty to do. But that is that business, that hands-on. I am best in front of people. I go to the shops, like you saw me, him coming up to me and wanting the experience of talking to the rep, asking questions. Maybe he didn't think he had a question until I open my mouth and start talking about binder, wrapper, filler, and countries of origin and all that fun stuff. But that's what we missed out on, so much of that from this last COVID year. Now, Drew Estate, we did a fan-fucking-tastic job of supporting our retailers, and they did an amazing job of supporting us as well. I mean, most of my retailers are up and have been since last year. We thought last year was record-breaking. This year was even more so. But last year, we weren't on the road. I wasn't on the road until June of this year. And we did virtual events. So it wasn't as hands-on. I was there if people had questions, but it really isn't the same because it's a broader platform. So you go to a virtual event and you listen to one or two people speak at the same time, me or an ambassador, as we call them, of our company. Instead of when you go to an event like we were at Caravan, where I was talking to Jer, and then Brian was talking to somebody else. And then there's pockets of conversation that happen naturally because that's how it works at a cigar lounge. But in virtual events, you don't have that.
Yeah.
Which is miserable. I don't want to sit there and talk for the whole hour. I want people to ask questions. I want them to talk to each other and I want them to interact in that way. So the one thing that Zoom does have is what's called breakout rooms. So my plan, because we are no longer doing in-store events, Caravan was one of the last in-store events I got to do this year because COVID just keeps getting worse. So we are, again, trying to be a responsible company and keeping people off the road, socially distancing when we can and just being responsible. But I miss that interaction. I miss being able to just talk to people and being this close to them and sharing an experience.
It's hard. I did a couple Zooms and moving into the new studio, like we're set up to do Zoom, but it's just an added thing where I would need help. And when we do the new studio, I want to set it up so it's kind of plug and play. But it's really difficult, especially if you're like a passionate person or just from talking to you before we started, like your selling point is definitely 100% interacting in person. Like it's really hard to emotionally connect with somebody over a Zoom call. Like you can do it, but it's not the same feeling as being one-on-one. And then that was kind of the hardest hurdle for me, is like, I need this to be in here. And then like, sometimes it's hard to get people to come in because the drive, and like, 90% of the time I can get the person to do it because I'll I give back and I want to return the favor, but like, it's not the same experience. So it's like, that's gotta be such a curve now to kind of rebuild yourself to now market through the computer, but it's not a bad thing because you will get something out of it.
Well, and the really interesting part though, because there are those negatives, right? We don't get the human, the physical or closer interaction, but being able to touch people from around the world.
Yes.
I did a Zoom with a guy in Japan.
Yes.
Which was amazing. There are people that are buying from my shops in Pennsylvania that live in Idaho and Iowa and Texas and California, and they come on to my Zooms. I never would have met them.
Yeah.
People that I call friends, I never would have met if it weren't for this last year. And I can appreciate that. I try to find the silver lining, because why be miserable, right?
Yeah. I love that you brought that up, because there is a silver lining to everything. As stupid and cliche as it sounds, you can find a positive in it. And that was one thing now where it's like, well, I can grow the show out into a whole new audience. And like, especially like with, I told you Kevin Internanato came on, and then, like now, if he's out on the road or if he's like working on a set in Germany and we want to do a Zoom together to bring him back on the show, now it's an added feature where it's a thing. There are ways, and especially with year 2 with going back into Zoom, that there's going to be a lot. It's not like that company hasn't been working on better features to make it easier for things to work too. Actually,
I did an international women's event on Zoom. So we of course sell internationally, and that's our guy Mac Bergson. He handles the international market for us, and he had asked me to assist with a women's event for Europe, which was awesome. But they had actually set it up so they had a band come on to do the intro when we started the event and the outro. So which was awesome. But it was really interesting how normally on Zoom you can't talk over each other. But even though the band was playing, the host was talking and I could hear them both. I'm like, whoa, Zoom, whoa.
Yeah.
When did you get fancy?
Because Zoom, when we just started using Zoom, but we used Skype. And Skype wasn't as easy, and the plug and play wasn't for Zoom. And then when I asked Jer, I'm like, what can I use as calls? That's going to work better. And he's like, well, Zoom is crushing it right now. And it is 100% easier to use than the other media stuff. I want to pull back a little bit because, and everybody does this, but like you just kind of brushed over, like now when you fall in love with cigars, how did you grow into what you're growing now? Because it wasn't like they were like, here you go,
right?
Hit the road.
This is how I have conversations, right? I appreciate you bringing it back.
No, you have to, but I do the same thing, and every guest does it because
one tangent leads to the next.
Yeah, and it's not even that, but like sometimes people just brush over their accomplishments, and like I like to bring them back and be like, no, like there was obviously hard work to get to where you're at. So like, you're selling it in a booth, and now you're getting into the actual product, and I'm sure opportunity completely changed because you're no longer just this person who's like, hey, check out our booth.
Well, so that's a good point. I was a booth babe. And we weren't selling. So at Cigar Fest, you get a booklet of tickets. Depending on if you're VIP or general admission, you get tickets. And then you can trade those for cigars, which is why I wanted to know the different options. So there were 6 different options that year. And I wanted to know what they were. And I smoked the Tobacco Especial Negra, which is I call it the reason I smoke. When people come up to me and say, oh, what's a cigar I should try? I'm like, that one right there.
Yeah.
So I went from being a booth babe to talking to the local representative, Chris Stone, being like, do you do events like this all the time? Because I could fucks with this, to put it kindly. He was like, oh yeah, whenever I have events like the one I was at Caravan, for example, I could have asked a model friend of mine to be there with me to help me sell, because I'm only one me and there are only a few people that work there. These mom and pop shops only ever have a handful of employees unless they're a bigger mom and pop shop, so on and so forth. So I started doing events with him and just learning more about cigars. And that led to me working in cigar shops because I wanted to be in this business. And I was always in retail because I was also still trying to be an actress, and I still am. I'm a Screen Actors Guild card holder because I'm still trying to be an actress whenever I can. So I was working in retail, learning more, and that led me to working for a smaller cigar company than Drew Estate called Etiquette. Now, I say smaller cigar company, but they've gotten 2 #1 ratings in Cigar Aficionado in the last 5 years, and a #2 cigar, and a #4, and so on. And then from there, Drew Estate scooped me up. So I've been working for them since I hit the road in January of 2020. So it took a lot, and it's been 7 years now since I started smoking cigars to get to this point that I'm now working for the cigar company that got me smoking cigars.
Yeah, and that's not easy to do, but I love that, and it's something I did when you know, because it's fun when you're passionate about something and then you find ways to dive into the business. Now, when I started the apparel company, I wanted to work in a screen printing shop. And I was like, if I work in a screen printing shop, I'm going to know the whole back end on making a t-shirt. So when you jumped into the cigar shop, that kind of rang a bell where I was like, oh man. So she was so obsessed with this that she wanted to work in the shops because that's going to further it more than being on the road. What was it like working in shops? Were you doing that full-time, part-time? Like, you know, what was the experience of being in a shop as compared to being on the road?
Well, so being on the road as a cigar representative, and to me, you need to work in a shop before you're ever a rep or a broker. That maybe that's just my opinion, but it's a pretty universal opinion because you need to learn what it's like to be in the store and having a representative come in and try to sell you something. And thankfully, I work for a company that I don't need to sell, so to speak. Acids sell themselves. It's the #1 and #2 selling cigar in America, probably the world, is the Cuba Cuba and the Blondie. Now it's all of our other brands, not all of them, sorry. Liga Privada is another one that just sells itself. That's our 2 top brands in our company. But working in a shop, understanding merchandising, something as simple as that. Like, where do you put your top sellers? Do you put them at the eye level? Do you put them, like, where you just put stuff? I needed the experience of working in a shop before I ever thought about hitting the road. And I thought about it years ago when Drew Estate so Chris Stone moved up in the company and they had to hire a representative, and I thought about applying, even though I had only been working for a couple of years in a shop, and I really didn't think that I was ready to work for a big company like Drew Estate. I knew that I wouldn't be ready for that. So they hired somebody else who's actually a really good friend of mine, Alex Mayer. He worked for 3 years in that position, and then I got hired to take over his position after working a year on the road as a rep. It's very difficult being a on-the-road cigar representative or any on-the-road representative.
How does that work when you go on the road? Because you were when I was talking to you, you were coming back from somewhere, and I do like the freedom of being on the road and doing stuff like that. But like, what does that all entail when you say that you're on the road selling cigars or just being on the road?
So when I worked for EPC, I had I want to say it was a 7-state territory. No, 5 states, sorry. All of Pennsylvania, so out west and back. Half of New York State, 5 boroughs, Long Island, Delaware, New Jersey, Maryland. So 6. I was never home. I had to route myself, which was the biggest challenge and still is, even though my territory is now much, much smaller. I only cover Eastern Pennsylvania. So when I say I'm on the road, I could be as far out as State College visiting your cigar den, or I could be in Chambersburg visiting Boswell Pipes, or I could be in Philadelphia, which is where I was coming back when I was talking to you, which was, my God, the homeless people just walking the street and they're just in front of your car. And I was just like cursing up a storm. I remember talking to you last week, like, what the fuck is this guy doing?
Yeah.
So that's what that entails. So routing myself, trying to figure out, okay, do I want to be on the road this week for 3 days? And where am I going to go to be able to go and come back?
Now, this is super interesting. So do you have to, is there a number of times that you have to visit the shop, or do they tell you that you just have to make your rounds and then you kind of plan your day out? How does that whole work with scheduling it? Because I'm having anxiety just from thinking about how I would have to plan it, and like I'm just picturing you have a map out and you have a highlighter that obviously you're using your phone and not doing that. But I immediately just had anxiety because I was like, I mean, but it would be, once you would get that job down, you could probably plan some pretty cool trips to kind of also take in seeing places and traveling and eating awesome food.
Right. And you're right. It is actually, that is my biggest form of anxiety, is routing myself. So even though I've now been doing this for 2.5 years, I'm still not great at it, but I call myself a representative, but really I'm a territory manager. Now, my boss doesn't call me up and say, you have to go see Lancaster this week, or you have to go to Harrisburg this week, or you have to go to Scranton this week. I'm responsible for that, which is...
But it's also better to have the responsibility than somebody telling you what to do every day, because that would get super old.
It really would. So while it is nice, like in the beginning, and he still does it where he'll say, look, if you need help routing, just talk to me. I love my boss. Ray is amazing. He's from Michigan originally. So every now and again, he gets his Midwest accent, especially if he's had too much Buffalo Trace. It's adorable. But he's just such a great dude. I love that he's my boss. And he's also like, if somebody's bad, if one of my accounts is tormenting me, I can just say, I'm going to have Ray call you. And he has a conversation with them. And just his mannerisms, the way he talks, it's always like he is the perfect person to be in the position that he's in. But routing myself in a way that, let's say I wanted to go for a nice hike on a Wednesday afternoon between shop visits, then I would route myself to where I know that there's good hiking because the day is going to be nice. But there is that kind of planning and freedom that I have being a territory manager. As long as I'm talking to my accounts, making sure that they're taken care of. I should really go to Scranton next week. Speaking of, I should really go to Scranton. Yeah.
I go up to Scranton. I do apparel through Axelrad screen printing, and they're out that way. And then I started kind of doing that where I'm like, hey, like you're here, like you don't just got to drive up here and then leave. And then the last time I went up, I did go hiking, and then like I started checking out food, and there's definitely a lot of good food around there. And then what's cool is I like just, and I'm not sure if you do this, but like I will ask like the locals, like, yo, where do you get hot dogs? And then like, because if you ask somebody where you get a hot dog in Nazareth, they're like, yo, you go to Potsy's. And like there is a hot dog spot in town. So like if I go to Scranton, this guy turned me on like this chili dog spot, and I was like, oh, but then that turns into content for me with taking pictures and being on the road.
Where is that?
It's a block over that way. Okay. We could go there after, because this will be over. It'll be lunch, so I'll go to Potsy's. I think they're open.
Love hot dogs.
Yeah, their hot dogs are good there. People argue who is the better hot dog place, but that's what I like about traveling is like I'll just talk to people, and then with doing this show, it's made it so much easier for me to talk to people, because I mean I am shy when it comes down to it, but this forces you. It's like bartending. I'm sure you've done it. Like you just put yourself in a position where now it's like I don't mind being like, hey, where do you eat around here, or like just striking up conversation instead of dead space, because I'm so used to keeping the conversation going, where now it's totally opposite, where like if I'm going to get my car fixed and I'm just like in a waiting area, I'll just be like, hey, what's up? Like, because I'm so used to filling the time.
Right.
But what extra things do you get to do on the road? Do you like to get into food and stuff? I know you said you love eating.
Well, I know my system, right? We were also talking about that, like knowing your body and knowing what it can handle, and food makes me tired.
Yeah.
So when I'm supposed to be driving an hour to my next stop
you
and
can't
I'm hungry, but if I eat and then it makes me tired and then I'm driving and I don't want to fall asleep driving. So I have to now, routing myself and then planning my day are two different things. So, okay, what time do I plan on eating? I keep protein shakes in the car, because by the time I get to my hotel, now I can have food because I'm not going anywhere else. Or if I'm on my way home, how close am I to home? Can I eat? It's planning my meals is one of the more frustrating parts about how I operate. But most reps really love that aspect of the job, being on the road and being able to go see all
I love
these
the freedom
places.
of it. I didn't realize,
so
and
much freedom.
like that was one of the main reasons I wanted to bring you on, was just to kind of dissect what it is you actually do, because I was just so intrigued by it. But then hearing the actual freedom that you get to kind of plan your trips, and then you could like plan things around the trips, and you're just like, you know, and then you genuinely care about the product. It's got to be a pretty fulfilling and freeing day. I'm, you know, like anything else, I'm sure there's ups and downs and harder days than not. But I mean, to be able to do that and then, you know, give a shit about it, it's got to feel pretty good that you worked your way up to that. What's it like, you know, having all this freedom and being like essentially not your own boss, but like to kind of create your own day? It's got to be kind of surreal, because you could be stuck in an office somewhere, especially with like the acting and the stuff. You seem like a creative person. It would probably drive you nuts if you were kind of locked down to one thing.
Well, and I can't just do one thing. I've tried working in an office space. I was in a cubicle for a very short amount of time. I worked at Famous.
It'll take your soul.
It tried to. I kept dumbbells under my desk because between calls. So I worked at Famous Smoke Shop in the retail store for a couple of years, and they also have the online. Well, I wanted to make a little extra money, so I worked online after my shift in the retail store. So I would go from retail, walk around to the back office because it's all in one location, and I would go sit in my cubicle and try not to lose too much of my soul.
Yeah, what do? Do you answer just questions when people come on the website?
No, they
fulfill orders.
Fulfill orders. So and answer questions. Like having me back there, being that I was like the only person back there that actually knew cigars, one of the two only people, because it's a good job if you just want to take orders, but in my opinion, you should really know about these things.
Absolutely.
But the problem is I would then talk to the people and take the order. And it's so weird with call centers. Like any call center, this is the job, is your call should be X amount of minutes long and get through it. And I'm like, aren't I a salesperson? Shouldn't I be trying to make a connection with them so that when they call and ask for me and they say, okay, well, I love the Tobacco Special. What else is like that? Okay, well, if you wanted to go outside of Drew Estate, then there's the Nub Cafe, there's the Macanudo M, there's like, I knew these things because I knew cigars and I worked in the retail store. But the other people would then send people to me because they didn't know how to answer the questions.
Yeah.
About accessories.
And then now you're just like, can you hold on a second? And then now you're just just answering everybody's questions and, you know.
Right. So for me, I can't just do one thing. Even like last year, the whole pandemic year happening and I was locked down, people kept like my accounts kept asking, don't you get bored? I'm like, I leather work, I crochet, I knit, I draw sometimes, I metal work. Actually, I don't think I remembered to mention that to you. I took a welding class for fun last year, so now I can successfully stick weld.
Where does now you obviously have like a drive and creativity in the way you carry yourself, was what I noticed about you, but where does all that come from? Where does the hands-on stuff and the crocheting, is it something your mom did or your grandmother did and you picked up as a child? Like, where does it come where you're kind of hands-on and you need this creative outlet to kind of dump these things into? Because, you know, a lot of people you know, like they get into careers and stuff or like that call center stuff and they're just kind of there to pass time in their life. But then the fact that you're like into the cigars and you want to sell them and you want to help out, like that's a different style. A person who's obviously comes from a creative background or kind of dives into the arts. Like where did you, even you wanting to be an actress, like where does all that come from?
I think a lot of it stemmed actually from my most recent diagnosis of ADHD, like thinking way back. So when I first started crocheting 20 years ago now, literally 20 years ago, I started because my best friend decided to teach me because her grandmother taught her. And I thought, okay, this is something I can do with my hands so that I'll listen better in class. Knowing that my brain worked that way, but not knowing what it was.
Yeah.
And not, like it was never a conversation I had with my parents like, oh, I can't concentrate in class, so I crochet. That was not the crystallizing thought. It was, I do something with my hands so I can listen better. I noticed that. So I started making stuffed animals. If you've ever seen Invader Zim, oh, hilarious, weird cartoon. It's, you know, look it up. Everybody do yourself a favor. and look that up. But there's a character called Gur, who's this little green dog robot thing. So I decided to make a purse. I crocheted a Gur purse. And people looked at it like, whoa, that's really cool. Could you make those for money? I'm like, yeah, I guess. But crocheting, it takes so long. It would take so long, but then I would get bored because I already knew how to do it.
Yeah.
Again, that's the ADHD thing, which I didn't know. And if I had known, would it be different, or would I just have known sooner?
There's also in there, you know, and I do a lot of that where it's like, you know, it takes a while to master something, and then when you master it, I think sometimes creative people also need that constant outlet where when you figure out how to do it, there isn't a challenge anymore. So it's like breaking the challenges and kind of moving it forward is kind of where you see different artists and people progress, whether it's they change the style of painting they do or whatnot. But yeah, you brought a bunch of things. So this is obviously something that then you started creating recently?
Recently. So I started getting into leatherworking because I got into motorcycling. I bought a 1980 XS650 Yamaha because I wanted to restore it. Well, the seat was all wonky, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to reupholster it. I'm going to learn how to work with leather. Like, that was how that happened. But then trying to reupholster the seat led to learning how to do something that I've been wanting to do, which is make, taking it back for a second, being a female cigar smoker, and being that only 13% of female are smoking cigars in the United States, there's not a lot of accessories just for us. So I had been saying for years that there should be a Herfa purse, a cigar purse. So it's a purse with cigar slots. Hang on. I brought one. This is an early one that I made.
You made this?
I did.
That's so crazy.
So it actually has...
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
The slots for cigars, as well as being a purse. Now, this one I've never used. I made it from a pattern that I bought at Tandy Leather, and I don't love this, which is why it stays in a box somewhere, and it's just a reminder of where I've come from. So I made that. Then I got into making these shoulder holster. This is a legit shoulder holster, so you can put a firearm on here if you wanted to, but it's also accessory pouch and cigar pouch.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I started making these because a woman...
Do you wear them when you do the events and stuff?
I've never made one for myself for some reason. I don't know why I haven't. There's a woman named Jax who works for Altadis down south who started wearing these. I'm not the... I take no credit in this idea. I just like to make them.
Yeah.
I make cutter cases, but
see, you brought stuff, and I didn't know that everything is connected back to cigars.
Most everything that I make, yeah, it's connected to cigars. This actually, a guy reached out to me and said, "Hey, I heard you work with leather. Can you make me a belt holster for my cutter and lighter?" I was like, yeah, I can figure that out. So I created this pattern, and this was the first one that I made because I have to make a preliminary. So it started with this, but then I realized that it should have a clip. So I tried a single clip. I didn't like how that worked out. So now I make it with 2 clips.
Yeah.
And this is a softer leather anyway, but so that holds a cutter and a lighter.
That's so cool.
And that's sort of how that progressed.
Yeah.
But going back to the reason I'm showing and telling at the moment is because I made this and I was like, okay, that's cool, but what else can I do with it?
Yeah.
And I made this and I'm like, okay, that's cool, but I'm not happy with just making it one way. There's always got to be a better way to do it.
Yeah.
Or a more efficient way. Like, okay, so the difference between all 3 of these isn't just the design. This is hand sewn. So is this one. This I did on a machine.
Yeah.
I can see the difference. I feel like other people could see the difference too, because I used a different thread for that. But there's like little things like that, okay, can it be done more efficiently? Is the pattern set? No, I can always advance it. Like that, I need to have a creative outlet. I need to make a thing.
No, I mean, it's very similar to cooking, where, you have hyper focus. You get into the general idea of the sandwich. So you know, like I made that Cuban sandwich. So that was the first time I ever cooked a Cuban at a pop-up. You know, I've made Cubans a dozen times, but through other people at a restaurant. So when I made that, you know, there's like, we did it. And then like, you know, then when it was over, I was sitting there and like decompressing because I literally cooked for 3 hours straight. But then the release is me sitting there, and then my partner Gina was like, stop it. She's like, I already see your wheels going. She's like, just enjoy being done. But I immediately was like, okay, like this is how I would do this differently, and this is how I would do this, and I would cut the ends of the bread off, and I would do this, I would do that, and you know, even when I'm in therapy, my therapist always yells at me because she's like, you get to the finish line and you push it out further, and you push it out further, and you push it out further. And I've been noticing the more creative and people that there's people that are driven who have a work ethic, then there's also people who are driven and have the work ethic, and then there's an obsession to constantly keep creating. And with how crazy and lost my life was before I got about halfway through this business and realized that I have to create. It's not something that doesn't, like, I don't just say that and like I'm like, oh, I have to create. Like I literally have to, because it controls my depression levels. It controls you know, like if I complete you know, a really difficult task of something that I've been obsessing about, it brings my up all the way up. And then my come down from that is, I've been noticing that the more I keep that going up, the easier it is for me to function as a person, because I'm not having my downs. And then when I jumped into doing this full time and I started really putting my hands in all these different projects, I realized that like I need this in order to function. And then when I meet other people that are also like obsessed with creating, and then like the fact that you are making these cigar things, and then it's not just like, oh, well, because a normal person would be okay with like the travel and all that, and then that would be their life. But then all of the stuff that you said so far isn't enough, so now you're like adding in the cigars and acting, and I it's one of my favorite things to meet other people, because I just thought I was alone like this. And then when I meet other people who are like obsessively creative, and it happens all the time on here, because 90% of the people that come on, they're driven and whatnot, but like, where does that drive come from? Where does that work ethic come from? Where does that come from deep down, where you just don't stop? Well,
you know, and that work ethic, you know, not being able to stop, I think it really does stem from my childhood, growing up the way that I did. So my mother she's West African. My dad was in the Peace Corps and met her. I'm mixed. Most people just think I'm Dominican. I'm Half-African.
I've never heard anyone use that term.
Well, because not that I'm original, but I'm half African, and I forget when I came up with it, but I have a friend who calls me the Half-African.
Yeah.
But my dad was in the Peace Corps, met my mother, and brought her over here 30 years ago. I can't remember the exact timeline, because they lived there for a while he was still in the Peace Corps. They had my brother, my other brother, and then me here. And she had a hard time doing what other people wanted. She couldn't go to work for people, not just because her English is so-so. She has a decent education, but she just couldn't be told what to do. My mother is definitely the alpha personality in the relationship between her and my dad. Not that he's submissive, but she's definitely the alpha. And she had to have her own business. She had to do her own thing. She had to create. She had to. Just like my dad is a musician for fun. He's a jack of all trades. I think it really does stem from watching both my parents as I was growing up. My dad can't just do one thing. But again, now that we realize it's the ADHD, like it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Like I don't just get it from him, I get it from him. He was a high school AP chemistry and physics teacher. He is a musician. He is a carpenter, he's an electrician, he's a plumber, he's whatever he wants to be. As they used to call that being a Renaissance person. You know, you collect hobbies as well.
Yeah.
I could fix a toilet if I needed to. I can tile a floor. I can build, because it was just fun learning how to do that stuff. But it's nice to have these life skills. So all of that came from watching my parents and just existing in that space, and just also having the freedom to do that. My parents were not, you have to do this with your life, or you have to do that with, they said, oh, is this what you wanted to do? Oh, no problem. We support you. I'm like, oh, cool. Like sometimes I wish they had tried to push me in a certain direction, because I'm actually I'm a college dropout, which is another one of those things that amazes me, that I managed to do a couple of years of college, and I was playing tennis at the time. So I also play tennis, by the way. So I'm playing tennis for the school, and it's a 2-year school. And after 2 years, I still didn't have my associates, and they said I couldn't play tennis. I was like, then I guess I'm done here. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm just not going to go to school anymore. I know I'm not going to focus. Now I don't have a reason to be here and pay enough attention in class, because if your grades were too shitty, you couldn't play. Like, but I was there to play, apparently. And when I realized that, I was like, then I'm done. And my dad was like, okay. So I worked about 6 different jobs, including being an actress and a model. And that led me here, literally to this very moment.
That's crazy. I grew up, and my parents, like my dad was very working class, worked in print shops. He was in the Vietnam War, and my mom was a nurse, and she went to nursing school. So I kind of got it from 2 different aspects, where like my dad would be like, look, you don't really want to be in factory work because I feel like you're just not going to be happy doing that. But I always was proud to do it because my father did it. And then from my mom's side, she would always push schooling. And then it was very difficult to explain to them what I was trying to do, especially when I didn't know what I was doing and I still was kind of confused that I needed to create. And then when I took the jump, it was like years of it. And then I remember my mom being like, it changed, where they started being like, they started saying things like, yeah, we think you should do it. And then it started being like the reassurance and the support that I needed, but I still doubted it. So like, I think if they would have told you and put you in a direction, you're also the type of person where I'm sure you get it from your mother, where you'd be like, yeah, well, I am going to do this anyways. Right. But then when they started kind of being behind it, now it's just a lot easier to live. Cause now, like, I was telling you, when I jumped into this, they were like, look, give it 2 months, see what you can do. See if you can pay your bills with it. Like, you've been working on it for 11 years, right? See if it'll work for you. So then when you said that, it was very similar, because I was a little bit opposite, where like they were kind of really kind of cattle shooting me to kind of like where some of my brothers went, where my one brother, 2 of my brothers learned trades and they're like very successful. And my other brother went to college, where I was just kind of like lost. And then it's like, so when I got a little bit direction, it was like I had to find out for myself. I'm also the type of person that like I have to do something in order to learn it. I'm not the type of person where they're like, like that's why like YouTube's huge for me. Like if I watch somebody do it and then I do it hands on, I can learn that way. That's why I love cooking. But having your parents support in anything you do, or having like, like I know now that like a lot of my creative stuff comes from my dad. And like, he could draw growing up, and like I was always frustrated because like, he was big into Legos, and my brothers would be able to follow the directions, and then mine would be like all these different colors, and it would just not, and then I just would wreck it and be pissed off. But like, when you start really getting older and looking at like where that comes from, and like, hearing how, you have both these different unique things coming from both sides of your parents. It's really like at the core, and it's kind of your choice whether or not you want to use that and kind of dive into the arts like they have, or you kind of just want to go, I don't know. I feel like sometimes people don't pay attention to that, and they're not self-aware of like these unique things that everybody has in them from their parents. And sometimes people bury that with like being, I want to make this much money a year, and then, I'm going to get lost in a job. And then like, I know a lot of people that are just like really unhappy with their life. And then I'm just like over here being like, I'm just trying to do shit that makes me happy because I can't live that way.
No. And that fascinates me. Like, I am not driven by money.
No.
I'm not driven by money. Like, look, it's nice to be able to live the way that I do, because I remember, again, 7 years ago, when I first got started in the cigar industry, struggling with money, but I was still happy. So I was okay with it. Like, living from paycheck to paycheck and having the massive credit card bill, but being able to have a massive credit card bill was kind of nice. But at the same time, like, there were all these little things, which is the other reason, like, I sell this stuff. I don't just make it to give it away. I do sell my leatherworking. A Crozier Leatherworks on Instagram. Thank you very much. I do still have creative outlets that are also monetary outlets. So it's nice to be like, all right, I need $600 this month. yeah, I could whip some stuff up and sell. Like I could stay up late and making, cutter cases, because everybody, I don't know why they love these so much. I mean, it's nice, but whatever. Or even, making stuff like this. This was commissioned. I figured it out, sold it to the dude, and now I have this pattern. Great. But I've never been money driven, but it's nice to know that I can make money if I need to. And yeah, having a little bit more than I used to is less stressful. Talking to my barista friend, where she's like talking to me about her budget. I come in and see her every weekend, Fridays and Saturday mornings, and I buy coffee and I tip her. And she looked at me one day. She was like, "Do you know how much you spend on coffee?" I was like, "Don't tell me." And she was like, "Seriously? Like, how much do you spend on coffee?" I'm like, "Let's not do this, because I am in a position where I can spend this much on coffee, support my local business, and support you. You're working 2 jobs. You just got married. Let me help you by supporting you."
Yeah.
And she just kind of was just like, "Harumph." And I'm like, I know how her brain works, because we're very similar, which is how we became friends so fast, because I only met her a couple of months ago, and she's like my bestie now, which is nice. But I'm like, look, just we're gonna figure this out. It's gonna be okay. Let me just support you in some way that I can, because I would never be able to just hand her $20 and say, "Go buy yourself something nice."
I like that you also keep what you're creating inside your job as well, because I do a lot of that, because I live in this world. So then it's like, all right, well, I can create apparel. So like how this started was apparel, but now I can make apparel for the studio. So like it started out as Never Again Clothing, then I had Never Again Radio, and then when I came here, that's when it became Never Again Studio, and then Never Again Studio umbrellaed everything underneath Never Again. And then now it's like I have these outlets where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to make a Never Again Studio shirt like this one. So like now it's like I don't have to just make t-shirts. Now I'm making t-shirts for the studio. So then it's like, and then when I plug different things into this, it allows me to monetarily make money off of all the different things. So like when I do the pop-ups and that, like, that kind of now the food is like the food is the first thing that was an outside thing that I was in love with, that I plugged into Never Again, that's working. So now I'm learning how to plug things into this network. But like with the food, it's like now I can go do pop-ups, and then I'm now interacting with people, which I'm sure you realize on the road is where you start getting feedback from stuff. So now you're getting feedback on the cigars, like I get feedback on the podcast, then you get feedback on your food, but then now I can turn all the food stuff into media that I can now pump through Never Again. And it's like, now it's like I'm learning, like I built the core base of this, and it's so weird because, like the way you're describing it is like we're working backwards. So like you create the thing that you love, and then you want to live off of it, so you have to figure out how to make money off of it. But a normal person would have figured out the budget and the money and all that first, and then would have, you know what I mean? But like,
right.
Like I had to do this. And then like when I created this and figured out what it was, then I had to build the monetary behind it, because I stopped doing this. A friend of mine passed away, his sister passed away, and I stopped doing this because it was just too much going on. And then the obsession, because I've already found an outlet to create, drew me back to it. And then when it drew me back to it, I was like, okay, this is something that has to be in your life the entire time. Now we're going to build out from this, and we're going to figure out how to live off of it and get away from the part-time job. But it was just extremely interesting to me that you're kind of like creating a business inside of your business that you already know already. And why wouldn't you be making stuff that directly involves cigars? Because it would be so much easier, because that's how people know you.
Right. And the other thing about it was, again, it started from just trying to reupholster a motorcycle seat, which I never successfully did.
But that's what you can always go back.
Actually, well, the seat's still sitting there. Like I remember exactly like the series of events that led to that, and that seat now sits in my leather working room. Just it looks at me. It reminds me that this is where I start. I'm probably never going to finish it for that reason, because it's like. It's like the first deer you shot. You mount its head on the wall. That's kind of what this motorcycle seat is. I got rid of the bike. I sold the bike after I did restore it. To be fair, I did restore it, and it was rideable. But I got rid of it because somebody else they loved it more. It was the guys. It was a whole series of events that happened, and I was like, "Then it's yours." And he was like, "What?" I'm like, just buy it from me. I don't care. That's the other thing I like about bikes. I have 4 in my garage right now, two of them work. One of them is the only one I'll ride, which is the Grom.
Yeah.
And technically it works. Anyway. The other bike dumped me twice, so I'm a little nervous on the road, but it's a 1300, and it's not because it was a powerful bike. It's because it was kind of a chopper. But coming back to leatherworking for a second here, I go all over the place.
It's my favorite part of the show. It doesn't matter.
When it came to these, like, I made a cutter case for me, and I pulled it out at a cigar shop, and they went, "Oh my God, that case is so cute." I'm like, "You want it?" And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, I made it. So I can just make myself another one. I'll sell it to you for $30. And they're like, "Okay." And now every time I go into that shop, he's like, "You know what this is?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." Like, that's how that started.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't intend to go selling them off of my cutters. I just wanted a case for my cutters, because some cutters, like this one's really, it's adorable. Sticks and Sips is our weekly show on Facebook. It's our virtual happy hour, as we call it. So I got this, and I didn't want it to get scratched up in my bag or my pocket, so I made a case for it. And then that leads to people just buying them right off of my cutters.
But that was also cool when I got into the hobby, because like we were talking and I have all the cigars over there, and then we were talking, you were like, you don't have this set up correctly. So but like now it's like, all right, well, you know, I want to get a little humidor, and then like, especially getting into smoking pipes, because I can smoke those down here. And I got into them with a friend of mine, and he watched all these YouTube videos, and he's teaching me how to pack it. Like, there's so much that goes into it for me, because it's like all the things that like, it's like, it stops the crazy. So like, all right, well, I got to pack the pipe. So it's like, it was funny because when I was at the event for the food, my buddy's like, "Dude, you are laser focused." And I'm like, "Yes, I have to focus in chaos. I need chaos in order to be focused." So like with the pipes and stuff, it's like, you know, like we were talking about earlier, it's like a dumbed down, it's like a slow down focus, which is now what I'm learning, like that, like I need these things where I need the hyper focus to kind of have a dump off release, but then to decompress, it's like I need these slow down focusing things. And one of them is like what it takes to get a pipe going or a cigar going. It's not just like light it up and you go. Like with loading a pipe up, it's like, you know, my buddy's like, "Well, this is the name of how you pack it. So like you pack it this way, roll it over the top." He's like, "Then you want to start lighting it, and then you want to put it down in and with the tamper, and then bring it in, and then it stays lit." And the first time I was able to do that, I was like, because it's funny, because the first time we got into smoking pipes, there was 900 matches all over it. Everyone had a headache because we had like 9 pipes in a row, where now it's to the point where like I learned how to set that up, and now it's just this ritual that's distracting me, that knows that the slowdown's coming. So like when I get into a cigar and stuff, I love all the accessories, and I love all the little things, and I keep it on my, like I have a carry pipe thing. So if like tonight I'm going over to my buddies, we're either going to have a cigar or a pipe, but like I have a travel bag, and I'm like, I'm going to take my motorcycle, and it's just like these like unknown rituals that I know where I'm going to be able to get to relax or have a really good conversation. And the build up to that is the accessories. And like when you really dive into that and start looking at like what's there as far as like a therapeutic tool, and not look at it so much as just like these things, it's a really, really cool hobby.
Yeah. And you're right. Like the ritual of it all, and having the items, or even like, again, going back to leatherworking and motorcycles, it started with the seat. I've definitely tried to make saddlebags. I'm not unsuccessful in that, but it's a whole thing, like using oiled leather instead of just vegetable tan leather, which is what this is, or chromium tan. Like there's also all this stuff to learn with it, which is one of the other reasons why I still really love the cigar industry. It never ends. I know people that have been in the industry for 50 years and they're still learning every single day, which it just encourages me to stay in it for so many reasons, but that being one of them. I'm never going to get bored with it because there's always something else to learn. Even like with Sticks and Sips, for example, the science of pairing, like sure, you can just have a drink and a cigar, but if they don't complement each other, it's not actually that enjoyable an experience. You ever try to have a cigar with an IPA? It can be really miserable because IPAs are so which I love IPAs. So being able to pair, let's say, an acid 20, acids pair with IPAs. Like, well, damn. all right, that's a good place for them. For people who don't usually like the acid cigar, because there are people who don't, just because it's the number one selling cigar doesn't mean everybody smokes them. It just means that whoever's buying them buys a lot of them.
Yeah.
But acid cigar, like I work for Drew Estate and I don't smoke acids. Maybe I'll smoke the acid 20 or the acid 5, which we made for the 5-year anniversary, but I have to have an IPA with it now because now it balances everything out and it's not too much.
See, now I'm going to try that.
Now you have to try it. Yeah, I would say something like a Hazy Bones or just like a nice hazy, juicy IPA and an acid cigar. Specifically the acid 20 I like with it, but Guinness and an acid red liquid, it's beautiful.
Yeah. See, like that's also like I like getting into the hobby and the deeper you go. And then like our friend Michael DePrima, he comes from New Jersey and he'll bring stuff up. And then when the three of us get together, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, we get to have a pipe together.
Right.
But then when you start pairing it with stuff and then you start bringing food and alcohol in it, now it's like this extra add-on thing to it. And like, it's a whole experience. Like, Jer, like he's like deep into it where he's almost having like a pipe a night and that's his unwind. And it's like, he like hit me up last night and was like pipe and beer. And I'm like, I won't be back till late. And then this morning he hit me up. He's like pipe and beer. But like that is such the perfect wind down for me now where it's like we have a beer and we have a pipe and like it slows the evening down. And sometimes when people are, especially like ourselves where you're nonstop like that, you almost need something on purpose to just stop the fucking madness. So it's like when I see you doing all this creative stuff, it's almost like, it's not, I wouldn't look at it as like an ADD distraction. It's really just like you finding these pockets of time for yourself. And like, that's what I like about cigars. And that's what I like about what you're doing here is you're in this industry and you're being super creative and you have all this stuff, but you're also making time for yourself inside that. And you're standing out as an individual for doing it.
Well, and I feel like somebody just recently asked me, no, it was the International Women's Event. One of the women had asked, how do you separate your work life from your home life when you're on the road 5 days a week? For when I worked for EPC and had a 6-state territory, this was actually how I started giving myself time.
Yeah.
I would come home. Oh my God. I would come home Saturday morning because I did an event on Friday night and I just couldn't make it home because I was 3 hours away and I'm really good at falling asleep driving. So I try not to do that.
Yeah, it's a great thing to be able to do.
Exactly. It's a skill, not crashing and falling asleep driving. Oh yeah. You do the
it's
one
tough.
eye.
It's tough because it creeps up on you. I was driving back from Connecticut and it was a rainstorm and like I could just feel my body. It's like kind of like when you know your foot's going to go to sleep and then it's just like this comfortable like, but it's like that sucks.
Yeah, so I try not to fall asleep driving. So
good for you.
I would stay in a hotel on a Friday night and then drive home Saturday morning. And then my boyfriend at the time would be like, "Okay, we're gonna take the motorcycles out," and I'd be like, "No." He's like, "No, we're gonna go to New Hope or we're gonna go to such and such." I'm like, "No, you don't understand what I've just been through.
Yeah,
I need to not today.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go." Like I would have to get really stern with him and be like, I would talk to him like a child. "I'm going to go leather work upstairs. You can go ride. Go to Lancaster on the bike. I don't care. I need today for me." And he would be like, "No, I want to spend time with you. I haven't seen you all week." I'm like, I hear you. But weekend tomorrow, I need today.
It's hard to explain that in relationships. And doing this has definitely ruined 90% of the relationships I've been in. But it's really hard when you do something like that. And then like Sundays, like I don't like doing anything on Sundays. Sundays is kind of my day at this point where like I just will put on TV and I just lay down. And then it's like because I'm in my work constantly. So it's like you're constantly reminded that like there's more to do, and then it's like I get real hard on myself where I'm like, "Hey, we're moving the studio. Why are you taking a break?" And like sometimes people don't understand like when you go through a creative process and you're doing something as a career and it's creativity and you give a shit about it, and you can't just kind of coast through it. Like I've had a million jobs and I've been at jobs and and then you kind of just wait for the weekend. And then when you get to the weekend, you let go where it's like, I have to do it backwards where, you're giving it 100% in your brain all day long. And then if you don't have a day where you turn it off, that's where you start burning out and stuff. And you need that space. And then when you have somebody who doesn't get that, or like wants your time and space, it becomes a very difficult tightrope to walk, and it's not fun to do.
No, and I have a friend who I actually, if you've never heard of spoon theory, the way it was told to me, and then I explained it to my dad. I like my dad's explanation a little better. So you have a plate of food, and you only have a certain number of spoons in a day to eat this plate of food. When you run out of spoons, sometimes you still have leftovers, and you're just done. So that's how he explains spoon theory. Do yourself a favor and look up the real explanation of spoon theory. But if you ever hear somebody say, I'm out of spoons, you're done. You've used up everything that you had for that day, because you only start your day with a certain amount of spoons or fortitude or what have you. And sometimes you're just done. And my friend says, look, meet yourself where you are and don't feel bad about it. Try not to feel bad about it. No, but I'm with you. There's definitely been weeks, I should say, I hit the road on Monday morning. I'm gone until Friday, and my yard has now 6 inches of grass that need to be mowed, but it's Saturday and I just can't.
Yeah.
Like, I just need to lay on the couch. Like, I can't even get up to do something that I enjoy, like make a thing. Just make a thing. These are so fast to make. I just need to make a thing. And I give myself that goal, like, okay, lay on the couch for half an hour, and then half an hour turns into a whole James Bond movie, and then I get up.
Yeah.
But I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes you just can't, and you have to forgive yourself for that.
And lately I've been paying attention to those moments and allowing them to happen. Like the other morning I got up and I couldn't get it going. And I was like, all right, like, what's the point of forcing yourself to do all this stuff? So like, you're not going to be able to operate. You're going to get confused later on in the day. You're either going to get into an argument with somebody, or like, I'm starting to figure out how my interactions can be better with people and how I can run this more efficiently. And sometimes the answer to that is to just go day by day. And if I wake up and I'm not feeling stuff, like the other morning, when was it? Maybe Monday morning or last week, I just was out of it, and I just sat down and I had a coffee, and my coffee didn't do it, and I had another coffee, and usually 2 coffees is what can, get me into go. It's a jump start, and it wasn't working. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna watch Billions, because like I'm just obsessed with watching Billions right now. And I just sat down and I watched an episode, then I watched another half of an episode, and then I was like, all right, I can think now. And then I went on a hike, and then the hike kind of opened it up. And then I came back here, and then I was able to focus, and then I was able to accomplish way more than if I would have forced myself to do it. And if you're not self-aware of when you need to kind of pull back, or if you kind of just like, I'm done thinking I'm like a normal person. Like, I'm just done. I'm done thinking that like I need, and I don't know if that's like what happens when you get into your 40s and you kind of just start really defining yourself as a person. But like, I'm over thinking that my day has got to be like anybody else's days. Like, I have friends who work 9 to 5s. I have friends who are tattoo artists. I have friends who do all different kinds of things, and this is what I built, and it's unique to me. And now I'm realizing that it has to be unique for me in order to work, and it has to be unique to me in order for me to function as a person.
Right. Honestly, I like the term neurodivergent and neurotypical. Like, when I talk to people, I'm like, oh yeah, they're neurotypical. They're never going to understand how our brain works, because their brains don't work this way.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Being able to say, like, my brothers, I have 2 older brothers. I'm the last of 6. Mom had 3 before she met Dad, and then she had 2 with Dad, and then 3 with Dad, I should say, me being the last one. But my 2 older brothers are completely different. My oldest brother, John, completely neurodivergent like me, but worse than me, worse in a good way. He's just so much more neurodivergent. But Paul, neurotypical, like literally textbook normal person. He's got the white picket fence and the 2 kids and the wife, and he's a police officer. And I'm like, and that's great. But when we talk about John, he's like, oh, John is blah. I'm like, can't he just? I'm like, actually, he can't just. That's not the way his brain works. And it's that simple. And he's like, yeah, but he can't. I'm like, no, he can't. He's like, but if he got on medication, I'm like, you try telling him to go on medication. It's not going to happen because of the way his brain works.
Yeah.
It's not. And that's fine. Accept him how he is, please. because this is how he's always going to be.
Yeah, and it's hard to accept yourself when you're that way. And it was always hard for me growing up, just because I knew I thought differently and had struggles with like all different kinds of stuff. But then, where I'm at now, and like I think I'm kind of like finally, with doing this show long enough and everything coming together, and like the work I put in with therapy and stuff, it's like I'm finally okay with being like who I am, which is what this show is to pull back who people are. And it's why the interviews go like this, is because I'm just generally obsessed with talking to other people who are like just trying to function on a level of creativity.
Yeah. No, I totally get that, man. It's I'm obviously really enjoying this.
Yeah, no, this is anytime. I want to kind of wrap up with like what you brought me and kind of get back into cigars. But anytime you're on the road, or you want to promote anything, or do anything, or if you're, when things go back to you doing more events, I can help you promote them, or we could do one here, especially at the new studio by that time. There's a lot of things that I'm not really talking about, and I'll talk to you after the show, where like we can really start like bringing this type of thing with like bringing cigars and involving Caravan and other things. The new studio is going to be way different as far as like being set up to be interactive, as far as like hosting.
Well, and when it comes to events, even when it comes to bringing cigar, I can't, because I am not while I'm a tobacconist, I don't have a tobacco license, so it has to go through a shop.
Yeah.
So we would have to include somebody like Caravan or Cigar International, or just anybody that's local.
Which is cool, because I'm now starting to develop relationships with them. And what's funny is I didn't realize that like I'm loosely related to the owners of Caravan, and like that he was like searching me to tag me in something, and he's like, "Is your Uncle Ron?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's Uncle fucking Ron." And then he was like, "Dude, that's my wife's thing." And then it was just funny. And then when I met the whole family down there, they're definitely people I want to work with more, and I'm going to bring them back on. But yeah, like we could definitely, but that's the thing, is the studio and the way the show is it's connected to so many different things, where it's like we can bring Caravan, we can do Cigars International, then that brings you in, and then now you have 3 people promoting it, being able to do a podcast, like, because we could do podcasts with with Caravan and you, and like really tie this whole thing together. Now, you brought me some things, because I am just an intro on getting into cigars and finding out different cigars, and I started with the acids, and then now it's like it's growing into knowing and liking different forms of cigars. Right. So what did you actually bring here? So
what I brought for you is actually it was a sampler pack that we released that's not for sale. It was
Do
just
you want to take
samples.
them to show from there?
If you want to, or if you would just want to fan them out,
okay,
I could be the voice in the background.
All right.
I really stuffed them in there. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
So, being that you just got started on your cigar journey,
it's stuck.
It's glue. Sorry. So you're holding 2 very different cigars there.
Yeah.
So you've got the Antaño CT in your left hand, which is going to be medium-bodied Connecticut. That's Ecuadorian Connecticut wrapper, and then the other cigar.
This one.
That one right there. So that's the newest cigar. That's the GT20. So that's celebrating 20 years of the Antaño 1970, which you do have an original 1970 in that pack, which is the other band that looked just like that one.
This one or this one?
That's the one. So that's the original 1970. All Nicaraguan tobacco, very strong cigar. But the last one there is the strongest cigar that Hoya de Nicaragua makes. And Hoya is a partner of Drew Estate. So they have their own factory, fields, blenders, and everything. And then the other pack that I gave you is our factory smokes, which I didn't open. And we don't really have to if you don't want to. Our factory smokes. And again, these samplers are not for sale. This was just, I know you smoke cigars. I wanted to give you something.
No, I leave Saturday for vacation, so I'll be taking these. I'll be taking these. They'll be fun. I mean, I might even get into them tonight. Now, we were kind of going over where you were like, some of these are way stronger than the others. And like, I also didn't realize till I started following Caravan and these other cigar people, and like, I didn't realize like there's things to do if you get like a nicotine buzz, or like things you should do before you get into smoking a cigar, because like I had acids and like, we were drinking and whatnot. And then, and then now where it's like, I kind of have them in the evening, I would definitely like to be schooled on like what you are supposed to do if you're getting into a stronger tobacco cigar, and you should definitely pay attention to that, because if you're not, you can definitely have a terrible experience, which is probably what some people do, where they just smoke a cigar, it's too much nicotine, they hate it, God, I was sick, I'm never smoking a cigar again.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that get started, they think they want to get started smoking, and a friend of theirs, their friends, oh my God, I love this. When I go into a shop and a guy says, honey, I love it. Oh, sorry. Sweetheart, I've been smoking for 40 years. I'm like, well, you've been doing it wrong for at least 30 of those years, probably, because you don't cut too much off of it. You just take the cap off, which you can actually see the cap of the cigar. It's the first line at the top. So just take the cap off, or do yourself a favor and make life even easier and get a V cutter.
See, I don't have any of this stuff.
I need to get you a cutter. So V cutter is going to create a divot. So it's only taking a little chunk out, or you can punch the cigar, which my earrings are actually cigar punches, because again, I just make stuff for women in the cigar industry.
Well, that's a good idea though.
Like cigar punch jewelry out of the shells that I shoot.
Now, when you punch a cigar, because like that's the thing is I have like, because with these cigars, I'm going to have to punch them or cut the end off. Like, what do you suggest for doing with any of these? Like, I know nothing with this stuff.
I'm going to get you a cutter out of the car. Don't let me leave without getting you a cutter. I know I have one, and I probably have a lighter for you as well. So with cigars, and it's so much easier to demonstrate, but just to tell you, you take the cap off, or you punch a hole in it, again with something like a 9mm shell. Clean it first, sharpen the edge with a Dremel, and then you just want to open it up a little bit, because you don't want to cut too much off of it, because a cigar, the way that it's rolled, if you cut past the cap, which is the head of the cigar, and you cut into the shoulders, as we call it, you're going to unravel the cigar. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And you don't want to do that. And when you light the end of it, you can either toast, if you have a hard flame, like I have here, you can toast the end of the cigar and then finish it off to light in your mouth, and just get it started. Try to get the cherry all the way around the foot of the cigar.
So there's techniques to it, just like how I was explaining how we got into doing the pipe stuff.
Exactly. It's a little bit easier. If you can light a pipe, you can keep a pipe lit, and you don't have to keep relighting it.
Yeah,
then
that's
cigars,
that's like
easy.
Always the goal.
Yeah.
Like easy. I'm like, I didn't have to light this twice.
And even with pipes, I'll just go on a tangent real quick. Pipes, when you start with a pipe, and as you use the same pipe for the same tobacco, so your aromatics should go in one pipe, your burleys, your orientals, they should all be in different pipes as you get into it. I'm sure your friends have told you this. I hope they have.
No, he dives into the deep end, and then he started buying more pipes, and then he's like, we should actually be using these for different things. And then like, I think it was like he had like a really strong cherry, and he's like, if you smoke this, it's going to be a while before it stops tasting like that. So that's when I was like, oh, all right. I need to start getting into different pipes and having different things. And like, that's what I was saying is like the whole hobby into getting into it. There's so many avenues with so many different things that are available to get into it.
Right. And with pipes, like he was saying, if you smoke a really strong cherry Cavendish in a pipe that you normally smoke a burley or oriental in, it's not going to taste the same, because you actually want that char within the bowl of the pipe. And that char is actually going to help keep your tobacco lit, because it's creating an insulation. So most pipes come pre-charred, but it's just an actual burn char, not a tobacco char that you're going to get as you smoke it, which it all soaks in. It helps season it, as well as anyway, just to go back to that. Yeah. Now cigars are so much easier. So if you can light a pipe, you can learn how to cut and light a cigar so much quicker, and it's actually really still rewarding, that hand to mouth action. Yeah. It's so rewarding. Now, humidor wise, there's now a company called Boveda, and there's several companies that make these water pillows, but Boveda makes it so easy for you to not even have a humidor, because a wooden humidor, they're frustrating because you have to season them. And what if the seal isn't what you thought it was because you bought a $30 humidor when you should have bought a $50 humidor, but it only holds 30 cigars and you have 5 cigars in it, and it's actually not going to work as well because there's only 5 cigars in a 30 count. Like, why do that to yourself when you can get a Boveda pack, a plastic bag, and you stick it in a container like that?
And that's what you're talking about at the beginning of the show, because I was like, you were asking me these questions, and I'm like,
a what?
I don't know how to store this stuff. And then what's funny is I almost bought a $30 humidor, and that's why I was like, oh yeah, I'll just get one to put it in. But then it makes sense, because if you don't have enough cigars, none of that's going to work. So what's the product that you were saying to get to kind of just put in with the cigars?
Boveda. So Boveda, Bovdea.
Yeah.
Boveda. It's a little brown thingy. It looks like an envelope. That's the word I was looking for. Envelope. It looks like a brown envelope with its name on it, with the humidity that it's supposed to be. So this is two-way humidification. So it'll release 69% humidity or 72% humidity, as well as soak up the humidity within its space. So if somebody gave you a cigar that was 80% humidity and it was really spongy and you stuck it in a bag, Ziploc bag, with this Boveda that's supposed to be 69% humidity, it's going to suck up that humidity and then slowly start to release 69%. So it equalizes it. That's why it's been so successful. They're actually, I only keep my cigars that way, and they have, different humidity levels for different things. Like, they make them for food, they make them for guitars, because wood has to be a certain humidity.
Oh, that's cool. So it's more than just for cigars. It's just like a humidity product.
Yep. Yeah, so you can visit, I think it's boveda.com or bovedainc.com or something like that. If you Google Boveda, Bovdea, right? Never mind. I'm going to stop trying to spell it. It's phonetic. However, I'm saying it is.
You probably put in BOV and it's going to come up in Google.
Exactly. You can Google it, go to their website, and you can find it. Most cigar shops worth their salt are going to have them or something similar to them. But that's the easiest way to keep cigars, as well as pipe tobacco. I would store your pipe tobacco at something like a 58% humidity, and they do make 58%ers that you can just stick in a mason jar with your pipe tobacco.
That's so much easier than, because I've been noticing, like, some of my pipe tobacco dried out, and then, like, it's just learning how to do all this stuff. But then I didn't even know, like, I knew I was storing that wrong, but then I was like, oh, I'll just go through these cigars before they would be. But then, like, I just keep getting more cigars, because, like, people will see stuff from the show, and, like, my buddy Preet, when I do the pop-ups down at Cigars International, like, he'll be like, yeah, I got you a cigar. So, like, now I have people giving me cigars, and then, I mean, you saw the amount I have. I don't think it's a lot, but it's a lot for one person. And I'm like, I'm not going to smoke all this stuff.
Sorry, it's a lot for you.
Yeah.
But to be fair,
I'm saying for a lot for someone who doesn't know anything at all about cigars.
I have a ridiculous collection.
Yeah. Now, how do you have them? Do you have like a big humidor? Or like, where do you keep all your stuff?
I keep them in.
Do you make a humidor?
I was thinking about it. I did think about it. Well, I was gonna. So I have a casket that I was gonna make into a humidor.
Yeah.
We were talking about earlier, but I decided to not do that. So I have coolers. So you can use a cooler because it's perfectly sealed.
Yeah.
So you can. I have 4 coolers of varying sizes. I have Ziploc bags and Bovedas. I have travel humidors, which I would suggest for you. Actually, getting a travel humidor is probably the best thing you can do for yourself, because
then I can just take it with me, because that's what I would be taking down to the beach now instead of.
So
I'm gonna order one of those though, just to have, because I'll take because they gave me the cigar boxes when I went to the Drew Estate one, and then I think the other one I got from, I forget, was Cigars International. So I do have those cases, but like, I don't want to just keep them in it because they look cool. I need to do it correctly.
Yeah. Now, if you can go to Caravan or you can go to CI and get a travel humidor. Now, don't get the Zycar if you don't want to.
What does that mean?
You'll see when you get there. Sorry. There's just so many different brands. Honestly, the case, I should have brought my big case. It's a 200 count because I bought it from Harbor Freight, because it's just a foam lined case, but get a legitimate one so that because it has cigar slots.
Yeah.
Because you don't want them knocking into each other. Because as they lose humidity, they get more brittle and
I'm
easier.
doing this so wrong.
It's okay. I'm going to help you. So get a travel humidor. Start with a 30 count because you already have like 20 cigars in there.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by start with.
Yeah.
Because as you get more cigars, you can take the foam out and just pile them on top of each other and then just pack them down. You'll see.
And just some of the cigars get better if they're aged and like the longer they stay in the humidors.
Sometimes. And again, you have to keep them properly, which we're going to help you.
Yeah.
We're going to get there if you keep them properly. And I would keep your acids and infused flavored cigars separate once you get to a point, because people are going to keep giving you cigars.
Yeah.
Because over the last 7 years, when I started smoking, people said, "Oh, I love this cigar. You should try it. And you should try this cigar." And working in a shop, representatives gave you cigars because they want you to smoke their cigar company and have an opinion about it so that you can then sell it because you work in a shop. So I just kept getting cigars and put them in different bags and bovedas and bags.
And then because everything's so loose in there, it's like I get lost on who gave me what, and I can't keep stuff separated and like
Ziploc bags.
Yeah. Oh, all right. That's why the Ziploc, because then I could take the ones that you gave me and put it in a Ziploc and even write on it to separate. You can tell yourself who gave it to you and what date you got it. Yeah.
So that way you know how long it's been sitting. It's something that I wish I had done early on. Now I'm at a point where I can pick up one of my plastic bags and go, okay, I know what year this was. Like I know who gave me this, why they gave me this, or when I got it, just because that's how I keep my cigars, is just like a mental checklist of when I got stuff. But not everything. Like there's one of my coolers is stuff that I bought. A lot of cigars I have were given to me. But the stuff that I paid for, I do keep separate. And I'm like, okay, I know when I bought this. This is 5 years old. This is 6 years old. Or, oh, hey, somebody sold me this box and they told me it was already 3 years old when I bought it. Holy crap. I should really smoke these. Because it's a bell curve. So because all the tobacco is so different, usually you don't know when it's going to peak. So while some cigars do get better with age, let's say they peak after 10 years, you don't know. Maybe they peak after 2 years and now you've kept it for another 4 and it's okay. But at some point it was really good.
Yeah.
So it's kind of tough. Like it's not that I don't condone storing cigars to age. I have 7-year-old cigars because I don't smoke them fast enough.
Yeah.
And I just have so many. I haven't even counted how many cigars I have. It's stupid.
I have so many cigars.
I have so many. And I share them.
Yeah.
When I do podcasts or I talk to people from across the country, they're like, "Oh man, I've never tried that." I'm like, wait. I put it in a bag, I write their name on it, and I send it off. I'm like, here, I'm not going to smoke these all. And then they send me cigars. I'm like, no, this was not the point.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's not what I asked you for.
It's very similar on the hobbies I have with my friends that trade like different beers, and they go back and forth. And then when they left me the cigars here, they were like, hey, give this out to guests that come on and stuff. And then, and I have been doing that, and that was cool because I was like, hey, like, you know, or if like I'm going over to the fight, I'll bring 3 cigars and I'll be like, hey, these are the ones that from Caravan and like this is their cigar and like this is for beginners. And then the other ones, he was like, that's for people who like are already smoking cigars. So then it's like I have friends like Preet who I can be like, you know, when I run into him, be like, hey, and then it's cool getting into the hobby because then like every once in a while, I'll go with my buddy Keith over to dinner at a friend's house, and there was a mutual person that I met there, and we talk occasionally when we're there, but I saw him leaving Cigars International when I was doing a breakfast pop-up, and I'm like, yo! I'm like, I didn't know you were in cigars. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, well, next time I come over to the house, I'll bring cigars. And he's like, I'll bring cigars as well, and we can smoke cigars together.
Right.
It's pretty cool. Just running into other people that smoke cigars. It's a hobby that I picked up that I didn't even know would be anything that would be a part of my life. But then the amount of unique people that I met from this between doing the Caravan event and then seeing you there and then being like, I bet you that's a really interesting podcast. And then meeting you and doing this interview and just seeing how driven you are and how creative you are and like what you do with your time and like how you built this job all together and like you've been one of the most interesting guests that I've had on. I can't wait to talk to you again and work on projects with Caravan and like get into the new studio. And like the new studio is going to be like, this has been such a pleasure for me to meet interesting people like yourself, but then for me to be able to repay the favor back, being in a space that I can now bring these businesses in, and then we work together, and then they get more out of it than just the interaction, is going to be such a pleasure to do. But you have such a cool story. This is an open door to anytime you come in the area, anytime you want to hang out and smoke a cigar, or even just come back on the podcast. The door is wide open. I want to give you the opportunity to plug what your social media is so that anyone can follow you if they want to follow along with your cigar stuff, or where they can get your leather stuff, or just anywhere that they can find more out about you.
Sure. So I'm on Instagram. Both my two Instagrams are Drew Estate Crozier, Crozier, Drew Estate being the company that I work for. And then A Crozier Leatherworks is how you can find some of my leatherworking stuff. You can also contact either one. Just Instagram messaging me is probably the easiest, quickest way to get me for the leatherworking stuff, because I do both anyway. And then on Facebook, don't even bother. I actually have so many pending friend requests. Just stick with Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram's my favorite platform to work off of. It's the best thing to network, where I don't even give my number out to people anymore. I'm like, just hit me up on Insta.
Yep.
It's the easiest, because I'm on it constantly working, and then it's the easiest. It's way better than texting. It's way better than, because I think 90% of how we were interacting is Instagram.
It was, yeah. It started out as Instagram, and then we could have even called each other on Instagram.
Yeah.
But, phone number doesn't bother me at all. Being able to just shoot you a text like, hey, Mike, what's up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really appreciate you bringing me on. This has
been
fantastic.
Of course. I didn't get a chance to meet you at Caravan, and then I was like, man, I wish I would have had time to talk to her, because Jared was like, yo, she was really cool, and she helped me out with all this. And as soon as he said that, I was like, that's probably a killer podcast. But that's like, it's weird, because that's kind of how I book the show, and like I try and just find unique people doing unique things, and I definitely knew there was something there. And then when we got on the phone, it was funny, because I was like, this is just going to be so easy. And then we talked for an hour before we did the podcast. So like I said, open invite anytime you want to come back on, and we can definitely work on projects down the road.
I like it. Thank you.
If you're a first-time listener, first-time watcher, first-time anything, you can go to neveragainstudio.com. The YouTube, neveragainstudio.com links out. So you can get the audio from iTunes. You can get it from Spotify. That is our home base. So if you go there, you can get to the YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube. Everything on there is self-explanatory. If you want to become on the show, you want to sponsor the show, anything that you would want to do with me is on neveragainstudio.com. I work apparel for Axelrad. So if you're a small business or a larger business and you'd like to start making clothing, or you need clothing at all, we can get you anything you need. What else is it that's on there? If you want to sponsor, there's information on there. My email's on there, neveragainstudio@gmail.com. Hit me up through Insta, Never Again Studio on Instagram. We also just recently started doing Nazo Ammo. So if you want to go to nazoammo.com, we are selling ammunition. We teamed up with Keystone Munitions right now. I believe we have 223 and 9mm, but we are looking to grow that more. It's all based on what Keystone is doing. So we're going to plug him into the network probably going into next year. We're building. I swear I'm going to get him on this podcast. I say it every episode. He's like my Matt Damon, where I don't have time to interview him. But I talked to Jeremy this week. We're going to nail it down after vacation. Thank you again for coming on. Please go check her stuff out. If you have any questions about cigars or anything at all, hit her up. I am excited to get into these, and I will be tagging you in them when I am on the beach relaxing.
I love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Never Again Radio. Get into it, brother.